everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a Greek pork naanwich. So we are going to make kind of like a little Greek meat log that we're going to put in some homemade naan with some sautéed veggies. And then we're going to whip up some little mini banana bread, like mini little banana bread loaves with some cream cheese frosting over the top. So let's start by whipping up our naan, our dough for our naan, because that always needs to hydrate a little bit before we do it. So we're going to start with our wet ingredients on there. So we're going to use a half a cup of sourdough discard. Let's see. So we want a half a cup. There we go. Set this guy over here. And then we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of water. There we go. So 3 tablespoons of water and 1/4 of a cup of yogurt or sour cream. And that's between the discard and the yogurt, it just makes the naan so like soft and fluffy. So it's just about a big kind of heaping spoonful here. And we're going to give this a little mix just to kind of dilute it all together. Then we're going to add in about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then salt, baking powder, baking soda, and then it'll be our flour. And this we'll kind of knead it together and let it hydrate before we kind of cook it up on our little skillet here. There we go. Let's add in, get my little measuring spoons here. So for the olive oil, I'm just going to give in a little drizzle, but it's about 2 tablespoons. So 1, 2. And then for salt, we're going to add in about a teaspoon of salt. And then a teaspoon of baking powder. And a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, a little less than 1/2 teaspoon. Okay, we're gonna give this a good mix. And once those start mixing up in here, it's gonna make our batter really fluffy because it's gonna, the baking soda and the baking powder is gonna react with the yogurt and the sourdough discard. There we go. Perfect. So you can see we've just got this nice, almost really light and fluffy wet base to our naan. And we're going to add in 1.5 cups of flour. Get my little tower over here. I need my flour, which is on the bottom. Our sugars are going to be for our little mini banana bread loaves. So 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So 1 and 1/2.
You have a question. What is sourdough discard?
So if you're making sourdough bread, you have a starter, which is what leavens your sourdough bread. So it's essentially fermented flour and water. And when you go to feed it, because you have to have it active, you feed it flour and water, you discard part of it. So you get rid of some of it so you're not making huge amounts of starter. And that discard is, again, you're just like unfed fermented flour and water, and it's really great to use in recipes for, you know, baking instead of just throwing it away. Okay, so here is our naan dough. I'm gonna do the rest of the kneading with my hands. It's got a slight little tack to it, but it's not super wet on here, but it is going to be just the most delicious naan ever. It's very tender and fluffy. But we'll knead this together, and then what we're going to do is we're going to let it hydrate for about, I'm going to say about 15 or so minutes. Let me put a little bit more flour in there because I want it to work, it'll knead up a little bit better. Here we go. sprinkle a little bit on here. Slide this guy over here. And that hydrating essentially is going to allow that flour to soak up the liquid from the yogurt and the water and just give you a softer end product. So we're going to knead this together. And you want to knead it for a good minute or two on there. And again, if it's just a little bit sticky, you just add a little bit of flour, just add it. You want it to be kind of a little tacky, but not where it completely sticks to your hand. There we go. So I'm going to shape it into a ball. We'll put it in our little bowl here, and we're going to let it rest. And then we'll make that into some naan here in just a second after it hydrates. And this is what we'll be making for our sandwich that will be like building it all in. It's going to be so delicious. Okay, now I've got some bananas that are in desperate need of being made into something delicious. So we're going to make these into little mini banana bread loaves with cream cheese frosting on it. I'm just giving them each a little smush inside so that it is easier to mash them up. Now with my bananas, once they start to go brown, I then pop them in the fridge to keep them like ripening on there without them spoiling. So the browner, the better on there because it's going to give you just the sweetness. That brown color is that sugar on there. So I have 2 that are super ripe and then 2 that are getting there, but not as ripe as the other ones. Get this in the trash. And we're going to give this a quick little mash, and then we're going to add in our sugars. But let's get these guys kind of mashed up. Now, you have to use overripe bananas. You do not want to use a banana that's still good for eating in the sense of, you can peel it and eat it. That is going to give you almost no flavor to your bread, your banana bread here. There we go. So we've got 4 bananas, or you can use 3 big bananas on it. Or we're going to mash it up. Once I add my sugars in here, this will turn into more of a banana soupiness for it. But I always like to do a little pre-mashing first. Helps it go a little bit faster. Okay, we are going to use a 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar and then a full cup of granulated sugar. Here we go. And slide this guy out of the way. And 1 full cup of sugar. And this is going to be the sweetness for it, really help it out, but it's going to just make it delicious. And I say these are more like along the lines like a banana cake versus like a muffin on there, but it will be fantastic. And just get away from, I feel like I make banana donuts and banana muffins or mini loaves a lot, but I don't change it up all that much. Sometimes I'll make banana bars, which these are kind of similar to. We're going to mix in our bananas with our sugar and just use that grit of the sugar to help, again, mash up your bananas until you've got a nice kind of little paste here. I don't like to leave too many really big chunks in my banana bread or banana base to it, but if you like it chunkier, you can definitely. I just kind of smash them down. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of melted butter, and I am using salted butter. Here we go. We'll give this a good mix in. Kind of incorporate it on there. And then we're going to add in 2 eggs and then a whole cup of yogurt or sour cream. You can use either one for it, but that's going to really keep these little mini banana loaves super moist. Okay, let's get our eggs, 2 eggs, and then a cup of sour cream or yogurt, either one. So we've got our 2 eggs. And let me get my yogurt here. I'm going to spoon it out, and then we'll get it from there. You'll want to use, I will say, don't use a Greek yogurt for this. Use just your traditional. You want a creamier one that's a little bit more similar to sour cream in texture. I feel like Greek yogurt, it doesn't have enough liquid in there to get you to where you want. So 1 cup of yogurt. There we go. And while we're doing that, we'll do our vanilla too. We're going to do 1 whole tablespoon of vanilla extract, and then we'll mix these guys in. So a lot of vanilla. If you have vanilla yogurt, you could use vanilla yogurt in this as well. So it doesn't have to be a plain yogurt on there because we are using vanilla flavoring in here. Smash those, kind of pop those yolks, and then we're going to mix it in. You just want to make sure you get all of your clumps out so that you don't have any, big clumps of yogurt or sour cream, whatever one you're using. Just try to make them as smooth as possible because you can do your mixing now, but when we add our flour in, you want to minimize the amount of mixing you do. There we go. And those looks like they're pretty well mixed in. Beautiful. Okay, let's add in our salt. We are going to add in a teaspoon of salt. We'll mix that in, and then we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda. There we go. And we will mix these guys in, and then it will be time for our flour here in just a second. But this is kind of our base to it all. The brown sugar and the granulated sugar really work well together to sweeten this up. But then the eggs and the baking soda give it a nice fluffy texture as well. Okay, just make sure your salt and your baking soda is well mixed in. And now we're going to add in 2 cups of flour. Okay, so 1. Now when we mix this in, be careful not to over mix. You want it to be a little bit chunky, but if you mix it too much, you're going to end up with a stiffer kind of mini loaf versus a nice fluffy one. So just mix until you see the white powderiness of flour gone, but not for a smooth batter. You want a lumpy, chunky batter. That's going to give you the fluffiest banana bread base for this. Here we go. We'll just kind of mix it in until, again, that flour is just, incorporated. Now, you can use a hand mixer with this if you want. Just be careful not to overmix. I feel like it is really, really easy to whip it up too fast because they go pretty fast. Okay, just make sure there's no powderness on the bottom. Okay, looks like we've got it nice and whipped up here. Now we're ready to spoon these into our mini loaves. Now, if you wanted to add some nuts, you could definitely add in some chopped walnuts or pecans, but I like to keep mine pretty simple. I'm going to grease up my little mini loaf pan. You could also do this in like a, like a 9 by 12, 8 by 12, or 9 by 13 inch pan as well. Both of those work great for this recipe. And if you wanted to, you could even do muffins for this as well. Okay, let's get this spooned in here. So I'm going to just start off with a couple spoons in each one, and then we'll come back over and even them out. That way they all get filled up roughly the same, depth, because you want them to bake up at the same time. spoon these guys in. But this is just going to have that it's going to have this great banana flavor. There's really, other than the vanilla, the spices are really simple to really let that banana shine in here. And then, of course, we will make a lovely cream cheese kind of frosting to put over the tops of them, just to give you just a lovely little loaf. Okay, now I'm going to just go in and kind of even these all out. There we go. This guy's going to need 2 scoops in there. And again, just try to make sure they're all evenly filled up, because you don't want some to bake up faster than the others. Okay, these are pretty even now. Got all of our batter up. And I'm just going to clean up just a little bit of edging on my pan. That way it's just making more of a mess now. There we go. That way it's easier to clean up later. Okay. Let's go pop these in the oven. And these are going to bake at 350 for about between 22 and 25 minutes. It really depends on how ripe your bananas are. If they're super ripe, it will take a little bit longer because there's more moisture in it. So 350, and I'm going to set my oven for 22. We'll just do 22, and then we'll check on them.
I have a question. Do you know what you're doing for dinner tonight?
So for dinner tonight, we are going to be actually probably grabbing some food or whatnot. It's our Friday. We like to do kind of a takeout on Friday. But we will be doing, hopefully tonight our plan is to do a late night. I've got a couple things I need to prep up. I was going to make some mini loaves, different ones, and some different sourdough. And then, of course, a treat for the weekend. Let's give our bread a quick here. This is our naan dough. Let's do a couple little kneads. It's almost ready. It's nice and hydrated. You can see it's a lot more elastic than it was before. Okay. While that's finishing up there and sitting there, I'm going to start heating up our skillet right here to cook the naan on. It takes forever to get nice and hot, so I want to make sure we have it there. But let's work on our little kind of pork meat logs. It's kind of a funny thing, but they're going to be little logs that you can kind of put in there. So shaped kind of like a hot dog, but made with some seasoned up ground pork. We're going to do kind of a panade to hold them together. So I'm going to put enough cream to make my 2 slices of bread nice and soggy. Now I'm using 2 slices of bread because I have about 1.5 pounds of meat, and I'm going to err on the side of having a bit more panade base than less, so that these hold together well. Here we go.
You have a question. Are you planning to do any recipe testing for Thanksgiving?
So pre-cooking up our recipes. We are thinking about hosting a Friendsgiving a little bit before Thanksgiving with some of our friends and whatnot. And then I always do my little, a lot of my recipes that I do there. So last year, one of my other friends hosted it, so we might do it. We are thinking about hosting it this year. So that would be a little kind of a test prep of all the dishes that I make at Thanksgiving. So I'll have to see. We have to get everything kind of coordinated with our group of friends, but we might be doing that. We're going to mix our eggs into our kind of our bread paste here and kind of incorporate it. And then we're going to add in our spices and then our ground pork. Now we're doing a Greek theme, and I got this new spice blend, so I'm actually kind of pretty eager to try it out. I'm going to use it on our vegetables as well, but it's called Greek Freak. So I'm excited. I always like to try new little spice blends that people come out, I was like, yeah, you could always make your own, but it's fine when somebody else does the work for you. Okay. Let me wash my hands, and we're going to add in our spices and get this going. Okay. Our base is onion powder. We're going to do about 2 tablespoons of it because I want a nice oniony flavor to hit in these little pork logs. Sounds such a weird way to say it. And then we're gonna, actually, they're like pork hot dogs that are sent, but they're not a hot dog. We're gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of garlic salt. And then we've got our Greek Freak, which is a Mediterranean blend, which pretty much has a whole bunch of delicious stuff in here that is quintessential in Greek cooking. I'll tell you if I like it and they turn out, if I can open it. I've got to get the lid off. Okay, we're just going to cut it. Let me grab a knife. There we go. It's like, if you ever get one of those like 20-ounce bottles of soda and the lid does not come off, this is what's going on here. We're going to put in about a tablespoon of this in here.
Can you use chopped fresh onions instead of onion powder?
They add a little different flavoring for it. I like onion powder because it also works as a binder and it's got a nice seasoning to it. We are going to be adding in some green onions to this mix. But if you do use chopped onions, what I would recommend is sauteing them in the pan first, like caramelize them, because otherwise they're going to give you a slightly different texture and not that kind of sweeter flavor that the onion powder gives you. Okay, I've got 2 green onions here, and we're going to mince these up nicely, and we're going to throw them into our base. And then, well, after we get this all mixed up, we're going to add our pork. But I'm going to make sure I mince these up kind of small because I don't want super huge chunks of green onions in here, but I do like the pop of green onion. Green onion's a lot more mild than a yellow onion or whatnot. So I think it's just a little bit nicer in there. There we go.
And can you go over what's in the base?
Yes. So right now we have 2 slices of bread soaked in cream, 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic salt, and about a tablespoon of Greek Freak seasoning. And now we added in 2 diced up green onions. Get my pork ready here so that we can mix it all together in just a second. And then I have, this is it's a little over 1.5 pounds of ground pork. Before I mix it in there, let's get our spices in here. And the reason I also really like the onion powder is it is also kind of gives you a really tasty, but kind of helps make it more sticky.
A question: why are you not using the white part of the green onion?
Because they're going to be cooked kind of quickly in the oven to cook all the way through. And I feel like the white part has more of that astringent onion flavor. So I kind of want it to be just the green part so that you don't have any super strong kicks of onion. Now, if I were to saute these, like if they were going into a dish, I would throw my white part of the onion in first, saute it, and then throw my green onions in just to get some of that stronger flavor out. Okay. Now we've got our little paste here working together. Perfect. So this is our seasoned up base for this. And what I'm going to do is on a baking sheet, I'm going to make almost like hot dog shaped little logs that will kind of cook up on there. Now, a lot of times you could also do these like on a skewer and grill them, but these will go perfectly in our little naan pocket. So I'm going to make about 4 because I'm planning to make 4 pieces of naan. So. And I say I'm using ground pork, but you could also use ground chicken or turkey. I find ground chicken's a little bit nicer than ground turkey because it has a little bit more fat. It's not as dry, but both of those would be really great options as well. Okay. I have to go back and add a little bit more to each one. There we go. It's always like, I feel like in the summer, I've seen people make burger dogs, in the sense where they make their hamburgers in like rectangle shapes to put into a hot dog bun. And I'm like, crafty if you only have, hot dog buns. There we go. And then I'm just going to go back through. Looks like I need to add a little bit more to each one. I'm never very good about guesstimating how much and dividing it in there. So almost like thinking about almost like meatloaves here, but like a Greek themed meatloaf. There we go. And last little bit here. So each one of these, since this was 1.5 pounds, so they should be, each one a little over like a quarter, like a third pound, close to it. So a good base for it. Okay. Let me wash my hands, and then we're going to pop these in the oven to bake up with our muffins. Now I'm cooking these at 350 because that's what our muffin is baking up at, but you could always do these at like 425 on a convection bake or an air fry thing to cook a little bit faster if you wanted to. They are going to take a little bit longer than a meatball because you have them, going there. They're bigger, but not as long as a meatloaf. I'm going to rotate my banana bread or banana things. They're popping up lovely. So we can get 2 right on the top there. So they'll come out a little bit after the banana bread, but we have time to make everything else now. So there we go. Our skillet is getting nice and hot. Let's get our vegetables sauteing, and then we will work on our naan.
You have a question? What does the bread panade do?
It acts as a binder that holds everything together. So a lot of people will use breadcrumbs as their binder in like a meatball or meatloaf. I find breadcrumbs are really dry and gives you more of a spongy base to your meal. If using a panade is going to give you a much tender and juicy meat, like kind of meatloaf, meatball, meat log base for it. Okay, I've got 1 nice big yellow onion. I'm going to do long, kind of skinny slices so that you can kind of fill up your little kind of like a sandwich with them. We're going to start these sauteing off, and then I've got some peppers and zucchini. And we'll use a little bit of our Greek freak seasoning with that. We drizzle a little bit of oil in here. I'll probably put about a tablespoon. Give me the rest of this. We'll get these onions sauteing up, kind of caramelizing, and then we'll add in our peppers and our whatnot. But these onions need a few minutes to kind of cook on their own to bring out that natural sweetness to just make it extra delicious. Okay. Started heating up on like a 6 or 7. A little of that onion juice off. Let me grab my little rolling pin here, a little fondant roller, so we can roll out our naan. Now that we've had sufficient time for it to hydrate. So your dough is going to be a really fluffy dough. It's not super dense. And when we cook up, the leavening agents, the baking powder and the baking soda are just going to make it just so fluffy. So we're making 4 good-sized naan here. I've got my skillet nice and hot. And kind of shape them in a ball first. That way they turn out more round. Mine never turn out round. We're going to roll it out. And you don't have to go as thin as tortillas. You don't want them that thin, but a nice kind of thin base for it. And we'll let this start to cook up. It's already retracted in just a little bit, but that is fine. I'm going to grab my cutting board so that when we take them off, what you do is you want to put them on and then butter them to keep them nice and just delicious and malleable. Now with this already preheated, this should cook up a little bit faster than if you wait from the very beginning, because a skillet, the first one always takes a good amount of time before it's ready.
And what is naan?
Naan is like, think about a fat, pillowy, soft tortilla. It's really common in like Indian food or Middle Eastern food or whatnot. They, naan, roti, they have a lot of different names for it. But it's delicious. It's, I always say it is similar to like a pita bread, but I find pita is a lot drier than a naan, where naan remains really, really fluffy and just is fabulous. My kids, we always do naan instead of pita bread for like when I make homemade Greek food, because I just think it tastes better.
And do you have this recipe posted anywhere?
I do believe this is a freebie recipe that I posted for everybody out in the spring. So you'll have to do some digging. I did a half version of it. My normal full-size version typically does 8 kind of bigger pieces of naan, but I didn't want a full-size recipe with today's meal. But I do believe I have that. So you'll have to go digging for it on there. But so that one, I think, beautiful. Look at that. That one should be nice for those because you'll have to just dig for it. Let me grab some room temperature butter here and we'll spread it on it in just a second. But you can just see how it puffs up and it just gets a lot more fluffy. I'm going to get this one to start going. Here we go. But it's one of those things, because they are bigger, you kind of have to cook them one at a time. There we go. This is not a circle. This will be more like a rectangle. I always say I just can never roll a circle quite right. Just a little bit more. I'm going to turn it down to a 3. While we're waiting for that one to kind of finish cooking there, I'm going to get my peppers prepped to throw in here, although I want to wait until these are a little bit more caramelized, and then my zucchini. And this will be just a nice kind of veggie, little sauteed veggie base that adds a little bit of filler to our little sandwich, which will be delicious. Take out. There we go. Just de-beard it, take out some of those seeds. And give them a good shake. I'm going to do these long and skinny as well. Now, when you're cutting peppers, cut from the inside versus the outside. That inside has a bit of texture, gives you a little bit more grip, less likely to slip. And if you do find that your knife is snagging on your pepper or onions, you just need to sharpen it up. I find that peppers, onions, and tomatoes are the 3 foods that I know when my knife is dull, because they slip and slide instead of cutting through it nicely.
When you get a second, can you go over the ingredients for the naan?
Yes. So it's a pretty, a simple base to it. I used sourdough discard for it, yogurt, baking powder, baking soda, salt, oil, and a little bit of water. And then flour, but it is just very tender and delicious for it. Sometimes I make it with sour cream. Sometimes I make it with yogurt, depending on what I have in there. But again, I do have this recipe available for everybody. It was a freebie I gave out in the spring, so you could definitely go dig through some posts and find it on there.
Are there any recipes where you prefer yeast instead of discard?
Yes, there are definitely some recipes that I prefer yeast in. My cinnamon rolls and my pretzels are both ones that I make with a yeast dough. It just really depends on it. Like my saffron buns that I make for Santa Lucia is a yeast dough. Um, they're two very different kind of cooking techniques. I also have a couple that are a hybrid of both in there. I used to do a lot of yeast baking before I started like my sourdough journey, and I will say I love it. They have very distinct different textures and taste, but I will say I do have a couple that I want there because yeast is going to give you a more softer bread for the base of it, where sourdough gives you a little bit more chewy. Let's see how this one's cooking up. Almost done there. Let's get our zucchini now. And then we've got our frosting that we've got to whip up, and we should be getting down here. I'm going to cut these kind of long and skinny, just like my peppers and onions. And then we have our little meat logs in the oven as well. We'll get those out shortly after our muffins, or not our muffins, our little banana bread that we have cooking up. Little banana loaves. Not quite a bread. They're a little bit sweeter than a bread on their slightly different flavors, but still delicious. Turn this down now to about a 5. Let's get this one flipped over. Beautiful. But you can see it fluffs up, and it is just so pillowy soft inside. It's just delicious. Okay, I'm going to do these kind of like little zucchini rods or strips. Let's get this guy. That way it eats a little bit nicer when they're all the same kind of shape. There we go. And then we'll throw these in. And these go in last over the things because you don't need to cook them quite as long, and they're a little bit more delicate. So when you're sauteing up vegetables, I always start with onions, and then I go from hardest vegetable to softest on there. So onions always need a little bit on themselves to come up, but then I did peppers, followed by zucchini. But if you wanted to do mushrooms with this, do the mushrooms before the zucchini. Beautiful. Getting this nice, lovely saute on there. Let's throw in our zucchini now that everything's getting a good little char on it. And then we'll season these up at the very end so that none of our spices kind of stick. There we go. Okay, let's check this guy. Almost. And got about a minute left, so I'm going to start bringing this stuff over here to make our frosting. But our banana bread mini loaf should be ready to come out. And then we're kind of down to the final little bit. We can check on our little meat kind of loaf logs. So we're going to make a lovely cream cheese frosting here for our kind of go on top of our little mini loaves. So I've got my little pack of cream cheese. So essentially we're going to do 1 pack of cream cheese with 1 stick of butter, and then we'll add in vanilla and powdered sugar, and we'll just kind of whisk it up. You want to make sure your butter and your cream cheese is room temperature or softened, so it just whips in there a little bit easier than if you're using cold, like straight out, like especially for frosting, it has to be room temperature. Let me turn these both down, and then let's go check those out. Okay. Beautiful. I'm going to give a little tap on it. I feel like, you know what, they might need 2 more minutes. So I'm going to rotate them. Again, I always say you won't know exactly how much time you need until but they're close. They just need a little bit. And then these are pretty close too. So I think these will both be done in about 2-3 minutes. So I'm going to set my timer for 2.5. We'll meet in the middle on there. And that way you want to make sure your dome on your little muffins or your bread is firm and not soft, because otherwise it will sink in after you take it out, and you'll have a doughy base for it. There we go. Give those a little toss. Got our next one. We're going to rub a little bit of our room temperature butter on it that it will melt over. This is going to keep your naan really soft and flexible so you're able to fold it. You've got to do this part. It's really important. Otherwise, it dries out and it doesn't get as, like, you can't like move it as much. Let's get this one rolled out, and then we can finish up our frosting, and then we'll season up our veggies, and then we'll be pretty much done because everything will be just about ready. Now, I'm making these, you can make them bigger. Sometimes I make them pretty big where they're like the whole skillet base for it. Or sometimes I make them like little naan dippers, depending on if I want to use them as like a kind of more of like an appetizer for it. Okay, we've got our package of cream cheese, room temperature. We've got our packet or half a cup of butter. We're going to use our little egg beater here, our hand mixer. We're going to mix these together real quick, and then we'll add in vanilla and powdered sugar. But you want to first cream your butter and your cream cheese together to make our frosting base. And you can also do this in a hand mixer or in a stand mixer if you want for it. You got my powdered sugar. We're going to do a little bit of powdered sugar at a time. I don't do it all in at one time, otherwise, poof, you get powdered sugar cloud. So we're going to start with 2 cups of powdered sugar. And then we're going to add in our vanilla as well. Before we do that, let's grab our stuff out of there. That way it can cool on everything. But let me give this a quick check. Not yet. Perfect. Okay. Oh, beautiful. Perfect. Nice and firm top. Doesn't sink in when I give it a little tap. And then I can tell these are done as well. So we've got our little pork, Greek seasoned pork, kind of mini meatloaf logs that we'll put inside our little wraps. We did a meatball base for them. And then we've got our banana, kind of like a banana cake mini loaf that we will put our frosting on it once they cool off a little bit. Okay, but they're just a light, fluffy. They're not as dense as a regular banana bread, which just makes them so lovely. And then these are seasoned with our green onions, bread, eggs. We are Greek freak seasoning, so they'll just be delicious. Okay. Let's add in our vanilla. We're going to do let's start with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. We might add a little bit more depending on how it flavors up, but I think a teaspoon should be good. And then start on slow when you start to mix it in so that you don't get your powdered sugar everywhere. There we go. Once it starts to form in there, it gets a little bit easier. So we're going to have this nice, lovely cream cheese frosting. Okay. Give it a little taste. I'm going to add a little bit more powdered sugar. I'm going to do 1 more cup. Again, I didn't put it all in at one time because it makes it really hard to whisk in, but you don't want to go too heavy on it. I prefer my cream cheese frosting a little less sweet than most people's. A lot of people would use about 4 cups. I prefer about a cup less because I like it not to be overly sweet. So let's whisk these guys in. Make sure you incorporate it before you go too high on it. And then I think we're ready to flip this guy. Beautiful. So now once you have it all mixed in, you can increase your speed just a little bit to get it a little bit more air whipped into it. There we go. And there is a nice fluffy cream cheese frosting. Beautiful. And it's delicious. Okay, let's season up our veggies here. We're going to use a little bit of our Greek Freak seasoning as well. Just about a teaspoon or so. And then a little bit of garlic salt. Just a good shake over. And a little bit of onion powder because that's going to bind on it and just make it delicious. These guys, give this a nice little toss here. Kind of coat them up. And they smell fabulous. Okay. We'll let those kind of steam cook here just a second. I'm going to roll out my last naan on here to get it cooking once we take this one off. And then I'm going to put my cream cheese frosting in a little baggie so that we can kind of just pipe it over the top of our things for our banana muffins here. Especially, I'm going to kind of hurry because Jack seems like he has just about woken up from nap. And he'll be happy because he loves banana bread and naan. There we go. We just moved him to a big boy bed, so he's got a little newfound freedom on there. And whew. But he was, once they start climbing out of their crib, it's like, okay, it's time for it. And it makes me sad because he's our last one. And I just looked in there and I was like, I don't have a crib in my house anymore. After 5 babies, it's kind of hard not to have a crib. And now I'm like gonna get all the time, but it just really hit me when I was like, because I put him down for bed in it last night, and I was just like, he's in a big boy bed. He's such a big boy. He just turned 2. Although he made it longer in a big boy bed than some of them are in a crib than some of my kids. My oldest daughter, she was crazy. She was walking at 10 months. And I say walking, she was running at 10 months. And she climbed out of her crib at around, 14 months? So she moved to a bed early. And she was not the best nap taker at all. There we go. Our beautiful fluffy naan. And let's get a little bit in our bag. You know what? Let's see. I might just spread it on. Well, here, let me get a zip. Let me grab my little bag over here. I'm going to get a pastry bag so we can pipe it on there. Let me reach into my bag spot. Aha. This is where I keep all of my cake baking stuff. Now, if you don't have a pastry bag, you could definitely spread it on, but a Ziploc baggie also works great for piping on. You just put it in there, squeeze all of it down to one side, and then cut the end. That's what I used for the longest time on there. I told you I've decorated for Christmas. I even got my Christmas utensils out. So we'll use our Christmas spatula. We're just gonna scoop it in here Now I'm only going to do the frosting on one because they need to cool off, but I want you guys to see how we'll pipe it over the top, kind of give you like that little loaf look for it. And it will be delicious. And if you wanted to do these, again, I did the little loaves, but you could do this also in a cake pan or in like little muffin holders. Okay. Let's get ready to serve up here, guys. There is our beautiful sauteed veggies. Our zucchini looks like it's nice and tender now, so I'm going to turn that off. We'll see if we're ready for flipping. Just a little bit longer on that. Now I'm going to I think we'll serve up over here. So let me clear this spot, get my cutting board out. We'll build our little naanwich, and then we'll put our cream cheese frosting on our little mini loaf. Okay. And where did my tongs go? There they are. I'll get my nice big fluffy one over here. I'll get everything ready to start up. And then you just squeeze it down. That way when we're ready to pipe, it's there. Okay, guys. Today for lunch, we made our delicious sourdough discard naan that we buttered up. See how pillowy soft it is? We used yogurt, sourdough discard, and flour, a little bit of salt in there. And we cooked it up on our skillet. And we're going to make a little naanwich with it. So we have this seasoned pork, kind of almost like a meatloaf. We use Greek seasoning in it, onion powder, fresh green onions in there. And then we made a lovely penne. And then we are going to top it with our sauteed veggies that we also seasoned up with our thing. And when you go to eat it, it will be perfect, like a little taco sandwich almost. Be delicious. And then we are going to, for a little treat, we have our almost like a banana bread / cake that we're going to top with our cream cheese frosting on the top for just a delicious sweet treat to go with our little Greek naanwich here. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page, search for what we made. So we've got our Greek pork naanwich with our banana kind of cake mini loaves and cream cheese frosting. You can always watch and cook along with me. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. It has our hex-clad pans, our knives, cutting boards, all the different gadgets we use in the kitchen. I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.